I'll start. Well, maybe we can interact. And folks, I've done a lot of talking now, and I can talk all night very happily. But the great thing about tastings is they're interactive and they're enjoyable. And let's make this an enjoyable and educational evening. I'd like to start, if I can, with the one in the middle, which is your 10-year-old single grain. We do a lot of tastings in the distillery at the moment, and everybody does it slightly differently. But I always start with the single grain, and there's a reason for that. I think of all our whiskies, it's a great starting point, and certainly I tend to go straight for the nose. I don't spend too much time looking at the colour. It's a classic colour of whiskey. People can get quite consumed by colour. I tend, with this particular whiskey, to get far more consumed by the nose. 10-year-old single grain, bottled at 40%. The nose on this one is hugely expressive, and a lot of people have different views on single grains. Single grain whiskies. A lot of people would say that they can be quite characterless, they can be without substance. This one immediately, as soon as you bring it to your nose, it gives you a good heavy punch of vanilla. I mentioned it's been distilled, we've been matured exclusively in bourbon barrels. One of the things that we did 2 years ago was, in fact, we recast this into brand new bourbon barrels. So two things have really contributed towards the nose of this whiskey. One, the fact that when it was distilled initially, there was a very, very high maize content to it, so corn, and perhaps a much lesser part of it would have been barley. And two, it was recasked literally 2 years ago and put into very high quality bourbon barrels. For that reason, there's a huge nose by comparison to an awful lot of the single grain whiskies that are on the market at the moment. Irish whiskey, it's hard to get Irish whiskey that is north of 5 years, okay, and that's a fact, and that's simply reflective of the landscape that we've carved out over the past number of years. 10-year-old single grain. Noel put this one together. He was determined to build on some of the work he had done with Greenore particularly, and Kilbeggan thereafter. I think we're probably one of the older single grains in the marketplace in the Irish whiskey at the moment. 10 years, and this is certainly one that everybody finds an enjoyable and a great opener. Put it into your mouth, it's very playful at 40%. It's very, very, very enjoyable to drink. I find that after I've swallowed it, the taste is, the finish isn't perhaps as long as you'll find in the other two whiskies at all, but it's a really good, enjoyable, fully flavoured grain whiskey with plenty of body and nose to it to make it a very enjoyable drinking whiskey. So as we say in Ireland, sláinte, and as you say here, sláinte twice. Excellent, it's going to be a long night. Erica, I think when we were in distillery, you certainly went for this one initially, I think, as your preferred.
Yeah, that's my preferred one of all three. I really like it. But I like it also on the fact that it's very hard to find good Irish grain whiskey, and older than 5 years you can't find. Yeah, as I mentioned to you, I did one with 9-year-old in cask strengths. That was also very good, and this is just more drinkable. It's 40%. It's a bit lighter then. Yeah, but I really like it.
I think we'll see more. There'll be more grain whiskey coming out. One of the features of the new distilleries in Ireland is a number of them have put together grain distilleries. You saw in our video and in the presentation we only have pot stills, but there's several new distilleries in Ireland now with grain distillation going on, column stills. So I think there's every possibility that this particular expression of whiskey will grow out of Ireland over the next 5-10 years.
Wie schmeckt er euch?
Relativ kräftig für.
Yeah.
It's very strong compared for 40%. I would blind make it 46 or something. Just to the expression in the first run. And then it's getting a little bit slower in the end, but overall the first touch is very, maybe it's due to the first whiskey today.
Sure.
For me.
And for all of us, I'm sure.
I miss a little bit the fruity which I get in the nose as well compared to the vanilla and then in the mouth it's a little bit less, but overall I like this. I'm known as I like grains, so.
Okay. And which other grains are you would be your go-to
Often I
grain? Yeah.
like the 40+ years
Right,
ones to
okay.
get this egg. It's
Yeah.
very fruity part. Yeah, I haven't drunk Irish old whiskies. Most of them are for sure Campos or
Yeah.
Westclyde or something like that. But
Yeah.
but as well, always giving it a try. I mean, there are good grains out of it, especially I prefer as well cask strengths, and they give a good punch always in the food.
And then you know, it's really hard when you, you know, in the first couple of years, you know, so many people, you know, sort of came to us as groups and said, God, distillery, you want to be mad to start a distillery. I said, yeah, well, you don't need to be, but it certainly helps. You know, it's very hard to know what to release in your opening few years. We wanted to do something with grain because Noel has a particular attachment, you know, to grain, and we wanted to do something that we thought was just a little bit different, to help try and, I won't say kickstart, but to help add another layer of depth to the single grain products, you know, coming out of Ireland. So if your normal curve, you know, it's hard to know where to pitch that. Again, look, you're restricted in large measure by the stocks you have to play with, obviously. But I think certainly, going back from memory, going back to what we had a few years ago, say 3 years ago, and when we made the decision to recask it, I think that was quite a key decision in terms of what's currently in that glass. That really did add a huge amount of additional, I don't know, impact, I would say, to this. I mean, what is the perception, Jen? Can I ask the perception? Do people have an awareness of single grain whiskey? Do they have a perception, you know, before this, or is it a category that's widely known, understood, or
known maybe, not so much.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ignored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
I mean,
you say
because,
it's a blend or it's a single grain, it's
yeah.
for someone who's not really into the whiskey topic.
Yeah.
They just want to have a single malt often. Yeah.
I've been told that a number of times, you know, and yet I will say, you know, at home, it's one that I tend to go to at the start of the evening, you know, quite a lot. But I you know, there's a fantastic Kilbeggan 15-year-old out there as well. If you can get your hands on that, that's certainly well worth trying.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also the Greenor 18.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Neil?
I think. But again, there's bits of, you know, you leave it for a while, and you know, Noel often says you kind of get that popcorn as well in it, and you know, you do, and that's quite important. Again, going back to GI, being able to, you know, to taste those you know, those original grains that were, you know, that were in it.
And this will be for the next 3 to 5 years, so you have enough supply?
Yeah, you know, it's a very obvious question to ask, and it's a very difficult one to answer. To be, you know, I can stand here and I can wax lyrical and I can make all sorts of. The reality of it is this: is that we have an amount of stock. You know, we have, and to us, you know, we will not release something that Noel hasn't had a central play in. Obviously, we don't have a grain distillery at Powerscourt. That would have been wrong for us to do. Like lots of distilleries, we'll outsource, our grain requirements. There are more grain distilleries in Ireland now. I think we can be quite prescriptive about what, how the grain spirit is made. But do we have sufficient to last? Obviously, over the next 5, 6, 7 years, we'll certainly be adding to our stock in that particular regard. And that's the case, by the way, of each of our whiskies, obviously, that we have at the moment. We have to go through that. There's that lovely phrase, your flight path. We have to go through that flight path of sort of, depleting down the stocks that we have at the moment, go through that period of releasing the new whiskies that will be formed from the spirits that we're laying down now, and ultimately getting to that place where everything is, from what we're doing now. This has actually been certainly a very enjoyable project to be involved with, and we're really pleased with that whiskey. We think it's a great example of how single grain whiskies can be. What are we on now?
Blend.
The blend. Righto. Marika, do you want to do a tasting, or like keep leading?
I can tell you can all keep your glass.
So I'll go. Our premium blend, as I mentioned, it's we've no grain. It's a mixture of double distilled malt and grain whiskies. I'm not allowed to tell you the proportion they're mixed in, but you can probably make your own relatively reasonable and accurate assessments in that regard. On the grain side, nothing is younger than 7 years. And on the malt side, I don't think we've nothing in here shy of 10 years on the malt side. Bottled at 40% also. And I often say when we're giving tastings in the distillery, the nose is certainly slightly more selfish. It certainly isn't as generous as the single grain. And I think that reflects two things. It reflects the fact that you've got malt whiskey in there now, which you can certainly get, slight hints of the malt in that. But also the grain is younger and it's not being rebarreled. So for those two reasons, the nose is slightly more selfish or tighter, as somebody said to me just a week ago. Again, bourbon barrels and plenty of what you would imagine from a straight bourbon barrels, plenty of the citrus notes and good strong lines of vanilla as well. And in this one, the difference is you can certainly detect the malt in this blend, but it's not overpowering. It's not really there. It's definitely there. Bottled at 40%, very sweet, very mellow in the mouth. I think some people might describe it as being slightly calmer than the single grain. It certainly has a much longer finish. And as you breathe out through your nose, by comparison to the single grain, you still get some of those lovely little aromas, the maltiness just starting to touch and tickle the back of your nose. Yeah, I find that a really enjoyable blended Irish whiskey. A lot of the blended Irish whiskies that you'll see coming out in the next little while, the ones that exist at the moment, will naturally and understandably have younger whiskies in them. Again, that's a reflection of our development as an industry and where we are at the moment. It's not something that will always be the case, but it reflects the stock that's available at the moment, and the lines that different people are experimenting with as they try to find their niche. This one, I can tell you in terms of, why did we release this one? I guess lots of reasons, but one of them certainly is we're seeing, and it's not just something that's written about, but we're seeing much larger numbers of younger people coming into the category, experimenting with whiskies, and of course young people experiment in different ways. They want something that's slightly more versatile and something that maybe is a little bit more of a workhorse, maybe a sort of a workhorse whiskey. They want to associate themselves with you, but they want something that's quite versatile, and that's why we released a blend. I guess speaking practically and commercially, does it make sense for a distillery such as ourselves, to release a blended product? It's certainly commercially challenging because you're drawing together whiskies and you're crafting a product which, let's be honest about it, is very much better suited to significantly larger entities. So this has definitely been a bit of a challenge for us to release. Will we keep releasing blends as a distillery? And right, we will. Yes, of course we will, because we do love to have a portfolio, and we do intend to grow our portfolio. Will we always have this one available? No, we probably won't. This one goes very, very well with another well-known Irish drink called Stout. It's a great accompaniment to Stout.
And this whiskey is also used in the dessert tonight.
All right.
Yeah. We have rated
Dessert.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is that node also be involved in the blending, or is it something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every bottle that we have has got, I beg your pardon, did you ask, has Noel been involved in the blending?
Blending.
Yes. Together being a great distiller, he's a great blender, great storyteller, great musician. Just don't ask him to sing, trust me. But yes, is the answer to your question. We kind of debated on this one. Should we release a blend? It's challenging to do. There are price points in the markets. These are things they're awkward sort of limitations around which you have to work. We thought, well, if we're going to release a blend, let's release one that you're happy with. So again, it was down to, we've got our stocks, we'll go and find out, what can work and what is a bit different to what you've put out, to date. I'd love to be able to, and I'm simply not there, but I'd love to spend more time with Noel when he's in some of our warehouses, individually sampling and trying and testing. I mean, that's one of the great things about being involved in a distillery. You actually get to spend some time with these activities. In my own case, it tends to be relatively limited. But our younger distillers, they're looking at these activities now. We're fortunate, I think, to have some of the stocks we have. And Noel is certainly very generous in terms of his educating. Anybody got any other questions on that, or?
Why do you haven't put the 7 on it? Is there a reason for the age? Because you could have made it 7, 10, 14?
It's actually an excellent question, and it's one that has spurred quite a few internal conversations. In fact, we had Ryan here, perhaps maybe you'll pick up some of the narrative here, Ryan. We've already been attacked for having the word premium on our label. Ireland's a great place to work in. As soon as things start happening that sort of are encouraging or good or positive, one department or other will start slapping you with letters telling you to stop doing it. And that certainly happened, I think, a few weeks ago.
We were getting, we had a nice audit going on from our local Health Services Board, who quite rightly said that the wording had to be changed. So that then presents us with the opportunity of looking at something like an age statement now for the premium blend, which would be something we could fill in that space.
We'll probably do. So look, I think look, in the overall context of things, I think the amount of blend that we'll release will be proportionately less, and that's just a function of our particular place in the marketplace. I think it makes, and we've agreed already internally, perhaps if we are releasing blends going forward, and there's lots of logical reasons for different types of blends, then it would make sense. So I think that's probably something that you may well see. Yeah. Do we hold regret about doing it? there's no point in holding your breath, you know. It's something I think they will see. Yeah.
Sorry? I'm not
Yes.
sure, did you mention the percentage of grains and malts?
No, that's whereas I can tell you that Noel's only worked in one place before, and I can't tell you where that is. No, that's an in-house. Obviously, that's an in-house thing. But look, it's reasonable to say that you know, when you have a blended whiskey, and which may be several different types of whiskey, but in this case it's two. You know, you're probably not looking at anything less than about 99% malt. No, I'm afraid I can't tell you. But it's, look, here's the answer. There is significantly more grain than malt, obviously.
What makes it a premium then?
Or why can't you use the name premium anymore?
You'd have that's why we left the marketing people at home. No, look, it's again, if you go back to sort of what I said earlier on, you know, we perhaps have ages of whiskey in here, which if you look at other blends that are on the marketplace at the moment and those that are being released, they perhaps are significantly younger, maybe by about 3, not in some cases up to 4 years in terms of their constituent parts. So that's the premium. But I think it creates confusion, and again, we haven't done everything right, okay, and probably this is an area where I think we could perhaps do a little bit of refinement in terms of what we actually put on the label. Why is it premium? Because it's older whiskies are in the blend. But what does that mean to people? We've learned it creates a bit of confusion.
Alex, marketing blends is very difficult nowadays for small companies. Why didn't you label it just Fercullen Sugarloaf? Because in Ireland you may sell a blend anyhow.
Yeah. Again, I think we perhaps have learned a lot of lessons. No, I mean, these are great sessions. Trust me, folks, these are really, really good sessions, because what tends to happen, particularly in my role, is, you know, unless I come out and do nights like this, I hear stuff second-hand, third-hand, bits and pieces, in your distillery, in your visitor centre, you know, even at shows, you know, an awful lot of the time, people are extremely enthusiastic and positive, and they don't ask the questions that actually really matter. They get distracted by the location or the place or what have you. I think we perhaps have learned quite a lot, you know, on what we perhaps maybe should have done. We also were very excited. Like, we've learned a lot in the last 3 years. It's only 3 years. At certain times, I think perhaps certain emphasis may have been placed in areas of the company where other areas could have done with a little bit more thought and time. I still think, I'm going to defend it, folks, I still think the liquid is excellent. If the problem with the liquid is the label on the bottle, that's a small problem. If the problem is with, you know, the liquid, then we have a much bigger problem. And on that very carefully constructed answer. But yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. Let's look out at all the blends. They're all named different bits and pieces, and they all work. Yeah. Premium blend. Do you know what, actually, folks? Buy these bottles because they're going fast, and when they're gone, they're gone.
Then we have a collector's item.
That's it. Then you have a
and the
collector's
prices
item.
will go up.
I wonder how many is the first batch of this Fercullen blend? How many bottles?
Ryan, who's the
The
bottling?
first bottling was 5,000 bottles.
5,000.
Yeah, and we've since done a second bottling of around 7,000 plus.
So it's a limited bottling.
Of each.
Yeah.
Of the blend of the 10, of the 14.
Yeah, so they would have been 5,000, 5,000, 5,000, and
which
7,000,
batch do we
7,000,
have?
7,000.
First.
This would be from the first batch.
Does it say?
Yeah.
Does it say?
Yeah.
That's not small
No,
batch
no,
on it.
we
You should
don't- we
put
don't list
small
that.
batch.
Batch,
batch.
yeah.
Well, you know,
Sounds better
it's
than premium.
well, you know, it's again, you know, it's also a function we definitely have labeling issues with this particular product. We've discovered that, and we've got to do something about it. I don't think we have a problem with the liquid, and I'd go back to that. I don't think that's the problem. I think maybe the problem is one of labeling and information and education more than anything else.
So maybe we should go to the 14-year, and then everything's clear.
With maturity beyond its years. Right then, so there's thank you, Martha. There is no confusion whatever as to what we have here, folks. Just very briefly and quickly, as I think we perhaps all know, whereas the first two are bottled at 40%, bottled at 46%. All of our whiskies have been matured exclusively in bourbon barrels. I would compare this nose in terms of its generosity, more similar to the 10-year-old single grain. Very, very different nose. You now get that full belt of maltiness, and it's a tremendously giving nose, I think, for a 14-year-old malt whiskey. Huge belts of malt. Certainly there's more than a respectable hint of oak in there as well, on the nose. And then some of the high citrus tones as well. You can pick up if you play it in your glass a bit and get the nose in slowly. You can pick up some of, again, the classic bourbon tones. I don't know, we have one of, I won't say who it is, it's not Ryan, so he's excused with this one, but we have spent some time over the past few weeks, really spending some time as a group of people trying to get, is there something else that we can grab or take out of this nose? Is there... I'm not going to tell you what we came up with. I will tell you, but I would like to ask the floor, because if does somebody else want to speak or give an opinion?
Lime meringue.
Meringue.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the first time at all
I'm
we've heard
sure,
that.
no,
Yeah.
Hier da hinten?
Wir haben es nicht verstanden.
Meringue.
Ja, was heißt das?
Ja.
Was ist Meringue?
Genau.
Aufgeschlagen Eiweiß mit Zucker.
Baiser.
Baiser, ja,
Baiser.
genau. Oh, thank you.
Und was hattet ihr? Ihr habt auch diskutiert. Banane. Banana.
Yeah, I would go as well in this exotic squeeze thing with this, I would call it typical Irish. There is this kind of sweet, gummy style of nose, which I really like, especially when I search for Irish whiskies.
Yeah.
I want to have this.
So Kaugummi.
Yeah,
Buba
gummy,
Buba.
not that hard, but in an exotic way.
Yeah.
Lime on
Or
the
some
bubble.
wax. It's quite deep.
It's deep, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's I mean, this is why I think we have single malts, right? Because it's these bits that really excite, delight, and really pull.
I have
up.
peaty
Yes,
notes.
peaty notes.
Mint.
Oh, mint notes. Okay, well, none of you have come up with it, so I'm going to give you the answer as to what as to what one or two of our people said, and it was maybe it was late at night and after one or two too many, or I don't know if that is that possible? No, I don't think it's possible. Come on, Ryan, you can stand up and be brave.
I can't say it.
Your idea.
I'm a bit lost now. Which one this is?
This was pineapple juice. And I'm always amazed at tastings. It's always there's always. It wasn't so much pineapple juice, but my mother used to make a pineapple tart. That sort of burnt pineapple on top. I don't know if there's a similar thing that's eaten here. Sort of the rings of pineapple that's covered in sugar and then slightly burnt, and maybe it's there, or maybe that's just me wanting it to be there because one of our good guys said it. But certainly, when we talk about complex nose, I always say, what is complex? And complex is, well, it's slightly more challenging to describe than what you might ordinarily want to do. I get a belt of wood, I get a belt of the timber, and a belt of oak as well, I must be honest. Then in terms of taste, and I did, this isn't, I'd love to have this as my original, it's not. I learned this many years ago, not in Ireland, where if you really want to enjoy a single malt, and I'm sure many of you know this, if you just imagine pouring a small amount of your single malt into your mouth, trying to make, if you can, and here's the giveaway, a loch out of your tongue. So allowing yourself to have a small little bit just in the middle, and if you can do that, and maybe just very, very, very slowly and gently suck the air in over the top. If you do it too quickly, you'll probably cough and splutter, but if you can do that and then close your mouth, you have what I would say, that's the moment of tasting a single malt. Putting it out through your nose, there is so much pleasure. Well, I personally find there's just a huge amount of pleasure to that. It does bring you, well, everybody says it, or a lot of people say it, it does bring you back to some of those kitcheny type smells and flavours and bits and pieces that we all remember. No matter how miserable our childhood we all remember as kids. It brings you right back into that kitchen where the cereals and the grains that you had, or certainly we had, associated with breakfast, it's there. It's plenty of really delicious, homely flavours and aromas. I think on the tongue, probably this one, obviously with it being 46, it's slightly more spicy than the other whiskies that we've tasted. It's 46, it's not a cask strength, so it's not overly demanding. And again, the finish just goes on and on and on.
I think the sharpness is more noticeable on the other two. This is the smoothest for me from the sharpness. This one has a peppery sharpness. This one was like a ginger sharpness, and this more ripe fruits. And
mellowed.
Smoother, it's darker.
It's lovely. I was in a shop in Dublin recently that supplies our whiskies, and the chap there said at the very, very end he gets small little bits of charcoal as well in the finish, and I think there's traces of that as well that you can certainly detect in the finish. Not in the nose, but certainly in the finish.
Alex, I wonder, do you colour your whiskies?
Yes is the answer, to put a small bit of consistency in. We pick obviously a cask, and then if you have, you're doing bottle runs, but your trace elements, to keep the consistency in the colour. I could stand up, as I know lots of people say they don't, trace elements to keep the consistency within the product range. Well, folks, I'm going to finish up shortly, and I know that'll bring a huge relief to everyone. Certainly me, anyway, and definitely Ryan. But look, before we go into this last one, which is great because I didn't know we were going to do this evening. I would like to say and extend once again our delight as Powerscourt Distillery to be working with irishwhiskies.ie. America, I know that will face all sorts of educational challenges over the times ahead. Irish whiskey is emerging. It's not well understood still. We think that if we can simply open, well, we don't think this, but you know, if we can open distilleries and we can write a few things, that somehow the world will magically know. It doesn't know, and it won't know. It takes combined efforts of lots of people to share experience, to share knowledge, to share education. As a distillery, as one of the new distilleries in Ireland, we're absolutely determined to keep on going. We believe, and we hope you agree with us, that we've made a good start in the early releases of our stock. We believe that Noel's role within the distillery has been very central, will continue to be central, and we're actually genuinely very excited about our new spirit and what whiskies ultimately we might pull and craft out of this over the years ahead. So what you have in your glasses now, folks, is our new spirit, which would have come off our stills in Powerscourt. I suspect probably about 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. I don't imagine how else it managed to make its way across here, Ryan. I won't ask you the question on that one. This one that you have in your glasses now, folks, is 68%. So to the gentleman here on my left who likes to have slightly stronger alcohol, hopefully now we've managed to satisfy you with this one. I think you'd have to agree, folks, really beautiful floral, very, very, very acceptable, serially delicious, quite concentrated, obviously new spirit. A lot of the character of this obviously is yet to come out and take expression. New spirit is extremely concentrated by its very nature in terms of aromas and characteristics, but it's a lovely aromatic, light spirit to the nose, which is again reflective of the man behind it and the work on in our distillery. A lot of people come into our distillery at this one, and I think most I've seen, it's really one for the skin and for rubbing and getting the smells. And it is, again, as I said, it is, you're right back to your kitchens. You're right back into those lovely malty smells that you had as young people, and that you try to create again for your kids. And that's the great thing about whiskey, is that no matter which level you get involved with it, whether you're just a consumer or whether you're involved in a distillery itself, it's intergenerational. It goes on and on and on and on. We're back to that lovely little bit of produce in the land and spirit that's come out of it. Really clean nose on that, with respect to Noel and his things.
Has a nice development.
Sorry?
It has a nice development.
As new spirit.
In the beginning you have the fruits, and
yeah.
Now I have a lot of malt.
Yeah.
Barley.
And again, Noel will be known for that. I mean, you know, we weren't looking to produce a meaty, heavy, oily spirit. We were looking to produce something that was aromatic and flavorful. And you know, that was something that, again, if I go back to the earlier slide, having Noel in before we built our plant and having his influence over our plant has helped. Well, it's played a key role in what you have in your glass now, and we were very much aware of that. Again, that's a conversation that's taking place at the moment within small bottles of. A lot of new distilleries are doing that. Look, it's no secret. The first, I've gone on record, and I don't mind going on record for saying this. I don't mind who quotes me or misquotes me. You know, opening up a distillery of this size, you're into some very strong headwinds for quite a few years. And frankly, anything you can do to assist yourself through those headwinds is obviously a good and helpful thing. For us, and I think for most in fact for every new distillery, what you want to do, frankly, is lay down as much new spirit as you can prudently afford to do for future years. We've gone through our first year of production. We've recently doubled our production, not our capacity, our production, and we have plans to increase that again. I think at every step along the way, we've been encouraged by things that have happened. We planned to have our distillery operational, well, I guess to be fair, originally by April, but it became June. But that was within an acceptable sort of a difference. You have no idea when you put a new distillery together, and I've spoken to lots of people, and I've met lots of people who've worked in different. You have no idea really. You may have your plans, you may have your ambitions and your hopes, but you've no idea what's going to happen over those first few months and first few years. All you can do is put in measures to make sure that you try to get as close to what it is you want to achieve as is possible. It's slightly awkward because it can be misinterpreted as arrogance or something, which it absolutely isn't. We're just genuinely really happy as a bunch of whiskey people in Powerscourt that we've created this, and we genuinely look forward to what it can lead to. To answer your question, yeah, will we release it as is? Is it good enough to release as is? It's more than good enough. It's absolutely excellent new spirit. And I think it's something that people should have sentimentally, because it's our new spirit in a new distillery in Ireland. Folks, I'll say once again my second and last, not my last, Sláinte.